Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani here. So I've had people say to me, I feel gross in these relationships because I often give in to them. But let's break down the reasons why you do this. And there's one good reason that you do. It sucks. It sucks that narcissistic relationships feel like basically they're about capitulation, right? It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to give in or capitulate to the narcissistic person. We do it and we do it a lot. And then we look back at ourselves and we may feel a sense of shame or even disgust at ourselves. So let's take a deeper look at this behavior because lots of us do it, right? Giving in or capitulating, if you will, in a narcissistic relationship is in its simplest form, it's a survival behavior. Most of us would like to think that we do stand up for ourselves, that we will stand up for ourselves, fight for what is right. I mean, you do when you can, but how many hours do you really have in a day? If you do not give in to those narcissistic folks, you may not just lose a few minutes to an argument. You may lose hours, days, or even weeks to not only the arguing, but then the silent treatment, and then the lashing out, and then the replaying of it, and the rage, and the punishing you, and the tantrum. So over time, if you're in one of these relationships long enough, you do the math and you figure it out. You may say, if I give in on this, I will be able to salvage the afternoon, or the weekend, or the next few months. Time is valuable. So it may very well be that agreeing with them and going along with them that something is your fault, or that they were right, or that yes, they're the ones that remembered it right and you didn't, even when you know that's not true, or you'll do the plan the way they want, even though it's a dumb way to do it, whatever it is, you give in. And they feel a sense of control or dominance or whatever it is they need, and you get your day back. It's a damned if you do situation. Again, if you chose to have the fight with them and push back and not give in and hold your position and reality and perception, it could have devolved into something that would last a while. And longer term abuse, as well as rumination on your side about, shoot, I have now given up hours to this, and there are things I didn't get done, or it made me late to work, or I had to get someone to pick up the kids, or it disrupted my sleep. It can mess up your day. But in the same breath, the problem is if you do give in, it feels awful. The narcissistic person gets to continue through the world believing that they are right. You feel like you are complicit in your own gaslighting and abuse. And it can sustain a really unhealthy precedent in the relationship. And you may ruminate about giving in for even longer than you might have ruminated had you had the argument. So it's all about choices here. Now, if you are going to stay in a narcissistic relationship, and a lot of folks do, even if you stay with radical acceptance, the workarounds are painful. We cannot spend every day fighting and proving our reality and making things fair and just with someone who really isn't listening to us. And the giving in is often a primary workaround, but it doesn't have to be all awful all the time. Number one thing you have to do is you have to choose your battles. There are times you may take the fight. Yeah, and a lot of this I know relates to the concept of true north. There may be things they say or do, people that they go after that simply feel unacceptable. So you take the fight and recognize that the opportunity cost is that you lose the afternoon or the day or even the week. These, frankly, become tactical decisions where you figure out where it is worth it. And it may also be things where you believe that you have already lost enough of yourself in the relationship. So you just take back some territory and are willing to lose the time. But this really is, in some ways, it's like you're in a store deciding how much money I'm going to spend. This is about spending time. And then you ask yourself, can I, won't I, and what would it mean to me? And second thing to keep in mind is be prepared. People are sometimes surprised at how much time they lose when they engage with a narcissistic person. It's something I once called the narcissism tax. The expense of lost time and other resources, including money, raised by these relationships. So when you can, and you sense it is coming, already mentally prepare for the loss of time and other resources, whether that means getting a friend to pick up the kids, delaying the meeting, or recognizing that you will need to work a little bit more now that evening or weekend to make up for the time. You may say, you know what? Fighting for what mattered was worth it, and I was ready and I had the supports in place. But on the other, you may be prepared and say, I don't have these supports in place. I cannot give up this time. I am not taking this argument. Remind yourself that when you give in, why you gave in. As I said, it may be tactical, and seeing it as tactical can feel very different than feeling like a doormat or someone who just gives in. The narcissistic person does not care about your reality, so just because you relent doesn't mean you believe what you said to them. It can actually feel quite powerful to recognize how easily you can appease them. By throwing them crumbs, it helps you take back the power. Turn around that breadcrumbing table, right? And you can remain clear on who you are. It feels gross to be in such an inauthentic relationship, but that's old news. It has always been that. And sometimes becoming aware of it can, yes, it can bring up grief, but there's also an empowerment that comes from seeing something as it really is. Another thing you have to do is take care of you. Whether you give in or take the fight, either way, it takes a toll on you, mentally, emotionally, and physically. Whatever it is you need to do, take a walk, call a friend, take a nap, or simply physically soothe yourself in the moment, draw your arms around you, connect with your body. Your body does react to these situations, and being aware of it means that you are less surprised and it takes less of a toll. Stop talking to yourself in a disparaging way. That's the narcissistic person's job. When you give in the name of survival, it's sometimes simply just what needs to happen. But that doesn't mean you're a complicit or a codependent or weak. It means you're trying to survive. The key is that you recognize that giving in is not believing what they are saying. It's not giving up on yourself. It's keeping the trains in your life running on time. And in a world where most people still embolden and enable the narcissistic person, it is easy to believe that they didn't do anything wrong and you're the one with the issue. Trust me, it's not you. You are trying to keep life moving, and getting into a gaslighted house of mirrors with them is not a good use of your time. If anything, your ability to just give them the false narrative that they need to get through their distorted day and still retain your sense of self, that reflects some of the most difficult psychological work a person in an abusive, narcissistic, manipulative relationship has to go through. Lots of people give in these relationships. Again, it's the only way to survive. But without retaining their sense of self, that's what takes a toll on you. But if you can hold on to you in all of this, it will protect you. But ultimately, giving in, as often as we often have to give in to survive in these relationships, doesn't feel good. Because it's that slap in the face, that one more reminder that this is not going to change. And that brings up more grief, as well as bringing up exhaustion and fostering more rumination. Any of us who have active narcissistic relationships in our lives have to give in. Otherwise, our lives would largely be devoted, full-time job, to sparring and trying to convince the narcissistic person of something they will never be able to hear. And that really seems like a waste of time and a life. So find that way, hard as it may be, to recognize this as the workaround it is and hold on to your sense of self, despite the grief it brings. I have to tell you, as a clinician working in this space, this is where I hit the wall with people. They'll say, this is gross, that this is my life, like this entire marriage is a lie. And the gentle reminder to make as they go through the grief and the feelings is, it kind of always was. And sometimes knowing the lie for what it is. A scam doesn't suck less because you know it's a scam, but in a way you're prepared differently for it. So this is hard work. One video ain't going to change it, but I do know that so many of you feel icky after giving in, and I want to humanize that and say that's a normal reaction, but also find those workarounds, because the giving in is survival. And sometimes having to do that protects other people, protects yourself, and above all else, protects the other experiences in your life so you can get to them and not waste as much time on this relationship. Thanks again.